listening to
Catholic Sprouts,
the daily podcast for Catholic kids that strives to plant seeds of faith.
Greetings, young Squire Sprouts. Today is the 28th day in the 10th month in the year of our Lord 2023. My name is Sir Roland Paterlot, and you're listening to Saturdays with Sir Roland on Catholic Sprouts, where every Saturday we discuss the art of dragon slaying. Today we celebrate the feast day of two of the original disciples of Jesus, Saints Simon and Jude. Not much is known about their lives after the resurrection, but legend tells us they traveled to Persia together and were martyred for their faith in sharing the gospel. Like all the disciples, they teach us to persevere in the face of trials, and St. Jude is even known as the patron of desperate situations. Speaking of difficult situations, our young 3-year-old squire, Lady Lumina, has been ill this past week. Have you ever been ill with a cold or some kind of virus? Most of us, I think, have. It is pretty miserable, not just for the people who are sick, but also for the people who have to live with them if they don't deal with their illness very well. And as you can imagine, sometimes toddlers and babies can be, well, babies when they are sick. Dads, too, for that matter. There's a lot of whining and complaining and crying involved. And whether I'm sick or around someone who's sick, I pretty quickly get angry at the virus who caused it, which got me thinking. Viruses are a lot like dragons. So today, let's compare the two and see if we can learn a lesson. The reality is we all get sick from time to time, and we all sin. Although I would bet for most of us, we sin more often than we get sick. Now, to be sure, it is not usually our fault when we get sick, while it is always our fault when we sin. But we've often defined dragons not just as sins, but also temptations and obstacles to becoming saints, so viruses can certainly still be dragons. Sir Wyvern Pugilist, the author of the great manual called Dragon Slayers, has a dragon in his book called Morgul, which is the dragon that pesters us when we're sick. But what I really want to examine are the risk factors for viruses and sins. Remember, the more we know about our opponents, the more likely we can defeat them. When it comes to nasty viruses like the cold and flu, there is a lot of things we can do to avoid being infected, and a lot of that is prevention. Our bodies are designed by God to take great care of us, and we have a natural line of defense against viruses called our immune system. Our immune system is designed to block viruses from getting in our body and then kick them out if they do get in. But if we don't take care of our bodies, our immune system can get weaker and less effective. Our immune system stays healthy by getting the proper amount of sleep, eating nutritious food, and getting the right amount of exercise. Without our immune system, we would be sitting ducks for viruses, and they would easily destroy us. We don't stand much of a chance on our own. In the same way, there's a lot we can do to avoid being infected by sin or dragons. Our soul's immune system is grace. Without grace, we would be sitting ducks for every dragon in the book. We have to keep our soul's immune system strong and healthy by staying in the state of grace. So how do we do that? Well, we spend a lot of time in prayer. Prayer is as essential to the soul as rest and sleep are as essential to the body. Next, we eat the proper spiritual food. We need supernatural food, which keeps us spiritually strong and healthy, and that, of course, is the Holy Eucharist. The more we receive Jesus in the Eucharist and spend time with him in Eucharistic adoration, the more power we have to slay dragons and stay in the state of grace. We also need spiritual exercise. We were made to serve. And when we serve other people by performing the spiritual and corporal works of mercy and making a difference in other people's lives, our defense against dragons gets stronger and stronger. Now, we all know that viruses are contagious, which means they can spread from person to person. Nobody wants to be the sick kid who gets everyone else sick, so we try to avoid people when we are sick, and we usually try to avoid being around sick people when we can. Well, in a similar way, dragons can also be contagious. If all your friends hang around dragons, sooner or later you will end up catching the dragon or virus as well. Again, this is just an analogy, so it is not perfect in that we can't accidentally sin and nobody can make us sin. But we tend to become like our friends, so we need to be wise about who our friends are and who we spend time with. If Billy Joe Bob at school is always telling dirty jokes or making fun of other people, you should avoid hanging out with him. We also need to know our bad habits of our own and then our temptations and avoid those situations that might get us into trouble. If, for example, Gula, the indigo dragon of gluttony, makes you weak when chocolate Twinkies are around and you can't stop eating them, then you should avoid hiding in the pantry where the Twinkies are located when you play hide and seek with your sister. When you do get sick, or when you do get wounded by a dragon and sin, then you need to take note of how it happened so you can avoid it the next time. We call that doing an examination of conscience. We study our weaknesses, learn from our mistakes, and then avoid the near occasion of sin in the future. Like with a virus, Maybe you forgot to wash your hands after playing patty cake with Betty Sue at recess right before you ate lunch, and then Betty Sue just happened to go home sick that afternoon. A day or two later, you end up being sick. Well, take note. Wash your hands often, especially before you eat. Speaking of washing, I recommend using lots of holy water for your soul. Dip your hand in the holy water and do the sign of the cross every time you go into church. Some people spray their flower beds for weeds and they spray their pets for fleas. Well, I spray my kids for dragons with holy water every night. Now, what happens when we do get sick? As mentioned earlier, oftentimes we suffer, and it seems like our body is broken because our head hurts and we might get a fever or muscle aches, or maybe our nose gets all stuffy and starts to run. I hate it when my nose runs. I usually check to see if my feet smell, because if my nose is running and my feet are smelling, it probably means the wires got crossed. Sorry, that was an old joke from my dad joke database. Seriously. You might ask, why does a virus want our nose to run? Well, it doesn't. That is actually your immune system kicking into action because the virus is an intruder in your body. It's broken through your defenses, and now your body has to try to flush it out. Yes, it's annoying, but your body is actually just trying to do its job. Sometimes those inconveniences are necessary for you to get better. You also need to take the proper vitamins and minerals and medicine and drink the right kinds of fluids, even if it tastes bad. And you need to get extra sleep and rest, even if you don't want to. In a similar way, when we sin, it often causes a lot of pain and suffering in our lives. Nobody wants pain and suffering. But sometimes pain and suffering can be an act of mercy and make us remember how much we need God. Sometimes it is your spiritual immune system trying to help you get better and avoid dragons in the future. Maybe going to confession can be a little embarrassing and awkward and difficult sometimes, but that is how we can heal our dragon wounds and receive the necessary grace to avoid dragons in the future. Now, lastly, I'd just like to say that we also need to be patient with those who are sick and those who have dragon wounds. We need to try to help them get better, even if they are whiny and no fun to be around. I hate viruses, but I love my little girl immensely. In the same way, I hate dragons or sins, but I love the sinner. Always remember, when it comes to helping others, kill the virus, heal the person, slay the dragon, save the soul. This week, I challenge you to use our new Dragon Slayer's examination of conscience based on the 7 deadly dragons to help your soul be in the state of grace. And I challenge you to eat healthy, get the proper sleep, wash regularly, and exercise often to avoid those nasty cold and flu viruses. And until next week, I'll leave you under the protection of St. Michael the Great Archangel, St. Joseph the Terror of Dragons, and Mary, Queen of the Angels, Our Lady of Grace, and the woman whose seed crushed the head of the dragon.
That's it for Catholic Sprouts today. We'll be back tomorrow, but until then, continue to grow in your faith and truly sprout into the beautiful creation that God created you to be.
Hey, parents and kids, our resource of the week for the Dragon Slayers Training Guild is a free download of our examination of conscience based on the 7 deadly dragons. If you aren't in our training guild yet, please register for free at extraordinarymission.com/dragonslayers. And remember, listen to Catholic Sprouts every day, including Saturdays with Sir Roland.
This podcast is part of the Spoke Street Network. For more great podcasts, visit spokestreet.com.